the only way you learn about what to do next is by trying something to begin with. So my biggest lesson is from that is you learn by doing, like that. That's what fuels your next step. So you better just start trying things.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Founder Hour. We're hanging out with Jesse Genet. She's the CEO and founder of Lumi. They're a modern packaging partner for e-commerce brands. We're really excited to learn your story and kind of dive in deeper. So why don't we kind of start off from the sort of beginning, you know, where did you grow up and what was it kind of like, and, you know, maybe your college days.
Nice.
Start from there.
Awesome. All right. So nice to be here with you guys. So I grew up in the suburbs of Detroit, and I ended up going to design school, which out here in California. And design school is not like a thing that I knew existed when I grew up in Detroit. everyone I knew grew up to be like a profession that like fits in like a checkbox, you know, like dentist,
car engineer.
Dentist, doctor, lawyer, like accountant or whatever. There's a lot of crazy things from my upbringing, but like I only went to 3 years of high school. I like just told my parents I just was going to move to California, even though I didn't know where I was going to go to school. But one way or another, I got myself out here, and I ended up going to school for industrial design at a school called Art Center in Pasadena.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of interested now in, you know, the whole 3 years of high school, and you brought it up. I mean, might as well talk about it.
I'm not trying to paint myself as like a prodigy. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. I mean, like, so why don't you kind of delve deeper into that?
Yeah. So I've always been, I guess it's less about the fact that I was like good at school and more about the fact that I was good at getting out of it, I think. I don't know how many of you, like, I don't know if you guys had like a high school rule book, or like, did they ever give you a calendar, like a high school handbook, and then at the back of it was like all the rules of your high school?
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Because I don't know if like every high school did that. So like,
I went to a Catholic high school.
Yeah.
This beard that I'm rocking right now.
Yeah.
You couldn't have it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so we had like a rule book, and there was like a little calendar in there, but it was like an inch thick at the back with rules. And I was like the type of student that instead of listening in class, I started reading all of the rules of my school district. It was literally a printed booklet of all the rules of my school district. And I was just like reading one day and reading, and I found this like obscure like passage in like page 50 or whatever. We talked about early graduation.
Love it.
I know. And it was like literally a set of rules of like, if you get the signature of your principal, your 2 biological parents, and your counselor, you can get out of your senior year. And
wow.
I was like,
that
sounds infinitely doable. Like,
that's great. Cool. So you go to Art Center. Like, what, you know, you're into design. What's kind of the goal for you at that point?
Well, I didn't know what industrial design even was. Like, do you guys like, I don't even know if I forced you to like define it, what it is, but it's like, I just thought it sounded cool. Like legit, like I was like a 19-year-old who was like, that sounds cool. Like I'm not trying to paint myself as not strategic, but there was this element, I guess the most profound I could put is like, there's this element in my personality that I felt like I could teach myself certain aspects of like business or other things that I could pursue in school, but whatever I was going to learn in industrial design school, I definitely didn't know. Yeah. Like that's all I knew. I was like, I'm definitely going to learn.
And that's very strategic. Very.
I'm definitely going to learn new things here, and so I pursued that, and I found myself in this school up on a mountain in Pasadena that hovers over the Rose Bowl with 1,200 art school kids, and I'm like a hustler. Like I found myself in design school, and I was like, whoa, like what did I do? Yeah. like it's a different vibe. Art school is a different vibe. Like and I don't know if I ever really fit in, but it was definitely an interesting choice.
There's still rules there too.
Yeah, there's rules there.
Like how to.
There's social rules. Like basically in design school, and I don't want to paint it all with one brush because there's a lot of different people there. But it's like, you know, people are not. It's like commercialism is bad. Like don't sell out. Like what's your art? Like are you going to be a creative, like a legit creative? Whereas I like always knew I wanted to start a business. Like, I didn't think business was a dirty word, or, I was like, I had to mash a lot of elements of my personality to make that work.
So you graduated high school early, and you said, you kind of found yourself in LA, but obviously you didn't just kind of find yourself in LA.
No.
You must be a little strategic to have started this company. But, why design? I mean, like, I get it. You kind of wanted to just get into it, but you come out from Detroit to LA.
Yeah.
What is that transition like?
Awful. Like, honestly, I could paint my parents did not support that move, because I literally said, like, I was supposed to go to U of M. I actually went to orientation, and then I was like, I'm not going. I'm just going to get in my car and drive to LA. And, like, that's not a decision that my parents, like, supported. And so I had a little bit of money.
Are they alumni of the school?
Yeah, my whole family's U of M alumni. Yeah. Oh, like, my grandfather was, like, a quarterback. He, like, came home from World War II and then was, like, a quarterback on the U of M football team. Like, you can't get deeper than that. So
in the same league as Tom Brady right now.
And, like, all my aunts were, like, in the sorority there and, like, whatever. So,
So you're a big time rebel.
Yeah, it was definitely, like, not a good scene. Because they didn't understand why I would make that choice.
I can just imagine a whole intervention, just like your whole entire family sitting you down.
They just thought,
listen to us.
I think that they weren't mean about it, but they just were like, well, it was just like hands up in the air, like, well, we don't know what you're doing now, so it better work out, like, kind of like hope for the best situation. And they also they weren't, like, super financially supportive of the choice, right? Because it was a weird, crazy choice. So I had a little bit of money that I'd saved from this, like, company I started when I was in high school, but not a lot, like, not enough to, like, live in LA. And so I think that, I think about this a lot, because running a company is hard. I'm, like, many years into this journey now, but when I look back, like, I don't know if I've lived through harder days than, like, moving to LA as a 19-year-old with no friends and no support network and no money, and having to just literally, like, figure it out. Like, it was just, you have to scrape it together and figure it out. I was like, I kept all my clothes in the trunk of a car. I was just like, it was a bad scene.
So wait, you said you started a business in high school. What was the business?
So it was called Genet Shirts, and I would draw, like, illustrations, and then I would screen print them onto T-shirts. And that's where I got really into, like, the science behind printmaking and printing, which actually still serves me to this day. Like, I make packaging. It requires a really deep knowledge of printing processes. So everything's sort of connected. But I was printing T-shirts, and I created a website from scratch. It was terrible, but I did it in, like, my high school web design class or whatever, the whole thing. So, that was my first business.
So how much of that, I guess, experience, like, in that type of, in that setting, like, that business, like, kind of led you to, like, enjoy that kind of feeling of, like, starting your own thing?
I think it's a rate, the way I think about it is, like, it's sort of like a rate of learning. Like, what I learned by doing that, every time I start something, I kind of, like, throw myself to the wolves. Like, so I started that business at 15. The next summer, I convinced my parents the only other time before I moved here that I went to LA, convinced my parents to let me come out to LA to sleep on this family friend's couch for the summer to make my t-shirt business happen. Okay, literally, I sold them on this concept. So I was sleeping, I'm 16 years old, sleeping on someone's couch in Studio City, and I was here for the summer for the stated purpose of making my t-shirt business happen. What does that even mean? Okay, but what it meant to me was, like, I literally took my shirts and, like, order forms and stuff around to store on Melrose Avenue as a 16-year-old. And what I'm getting at here is, like, I did all sorts of weird things, but what I learned, it's not like I sold a bunch of shirts and stuff that way. What I learned was the only way you learn about what to do next is by trying something to begin with. So someone, when I tried to sell them shirts in a store, asked me if I knew about sales agencies and then showrooms, and they introduced me to someone. I had another conversation, and long story short, like, my biggest lesson is you learn by doing, like, that. That's what fuels your next step. So you better just start trying things.
Yeah, I mean, right there's, like, early stages of a salesman right there, master salesman, selling your parents on this whole move, right?
I mean, I think that, I was a convincing teenager.
Clearly. I mean, you came out to LA not once, but twice. And now you stuck around. I mean, you've been here now. So tell us about, the journey once you moved here, what you were involved in, and how you started getting acclimated to, life in Los Angeles.
Yeah, so I was here. I think like I probably had a weird LA existence. Maybe everyone has a weird LA story because LA is a weird city in many ways. But like so I land here. I have no job. I have nothing. I'm like living out of the trunk of my car. Then the first thing I did was like I got an internship at a fashion company down by USC. There was like, I don't want to be mean, but it was like a glorified sweatshop situation. And so like I found myself as like this teenager from the suburbs, like kind of working in a sweatshop environment. Like I wasn't treated that way, but actually that's part of what I learned was like I was off in this office, and then I witnessed a lot of weird things, and so basically I got thrown headfirst into like, you're in a big city now, all sorts of weird things are always happening. You gotta like navigate like what path. I refer to LA as like a choose your own adventure city. Like you could live any life you want here. Yeah. You gotta figure it out, and faster the better, kind of, because things can go awry. Like I jumped from thing to thing. Like I did some internships, and then I was like, I want to go to school, and that's when I found Art Center. And I think when I started going there, I found more. It's where I met my co-founder. Like I obviously started meeting some great people there.
Yeah, so most students in college are kind of like going through this 4 years of grinding and trying to learn as much as possible, keep their GPA up to get the best job they can out of college. Sounds like you didn't have your eyes, your sights set on like trying to go and work somewhere. You were like very entrepreneurial. So did you start Lumi in college, or did it start as something else? Was it after you went you graduated, started something else?
No, started Lumi, started the first version, like this fabric dye product that we launched on Kickstarter. I met my co-founder in school. He wasn't my co-founder first, he was just my friend, obviously, Stefan, and we launched a Kickstarter campaign in 2009. So I was in school. When we launched the Kickstarter campaign, though, it wasn't like we're launching a company. Right. We for all we knew, it would fail. For all we knew, like, people would have a little bit of interest, but not much. So it wasn't the mindset. Like, the mindset was, let's try this thing, let's experiment, let's try this new platform. And it was really, really fun. And so we launched our first campaign, raised $13,000, which at the time was a really big Kickstarter campaign. Because of the first year of Kickstarter, there's still a lot of campaigns that are raising like $2,000 or $3,000 or $5,000. So we did that, and to do a really early Kickstarter campaign was a really interesting experience. Like, we had to explain to everyone who pledged, we had to explain what it was. We had to be like, this is Kickstarter. It's new. Here's how you do it. Like, I mean, it's so early. So when we did that, though, and we succeeded, it definitely set a stage for, like, we never stopped. From there, like, we still were in school for like another year and a half, but we never stopped working on the business. At that point, at a certain point, we dropped out, so we didn't graduate. Yeah.
So I mean, like, this wasn't just even the start of Kickstarter, like crowdfunding, but just crowdsourcing in general, like just, the leveraging like social media and just, these large networks for one unified goal, if you will.
Yeah.
So like, it sounds like, you were really early to jump on that.
Yeah.
Was it kind of like, no question about it, we're just going to give it a try, or did you like feel like you knew you were going to be successful doing that?
It was total experiment. Like, I think, I don't know how familiar you guys are with, like, the maker movement and, like, maker fairs and Make Magazine and, like, that whole vibe of, like, DIY and everything. But for one, we had a product that fit into that market, this fabric dye, like that first company we ran. The product was called Inco Dye, and it's this light, sensitive fabric dye. And so it's a DIY product. Like, we were selling it to hobbyists and teachers, and we sold kits and Urban Outfitters. That's later. That's, like, 2012. But, like, but we... what I'm getting at here is that, like, we were, the vibe of that whole time, if you were kind of part of that movement, was like, just try it for the sake of trying it. Like, it would be crazy not to go out directly to the customer and ask, do you want this, before you start investing in it. It's
you have nothing to lose.
Yeah, you have nothing to lose. It's like a very different energy, very not calculated. There was no such thing at the time as like a well-orchestrated Kickstarter campaign with a marketing agency. Everyone was just like literally like turning on their eyesight camera and being like, hey world, I made a product. What do you think? And it was and there was a kind of an innocence to that. Yeah.
And nowadays it's just like super professionally shot content?
People ask me for advice, and I'm like,
viral movements.
I don't have advice for people doing Kickstarter campaigns
Right.
now. Well, that's not true. I do, and I really still believe that the story, people pull out their credit cards in Kickstarter because they believe in the people and the story. But for people who are doing those like highly orchestrated campaigns where they're like, it's already venture funded secretly, and they've got marketing agencies and stuff like. They're like, you were successful, and I'm like, yeah, I can't relate to what you're. I wasn't successful in the same way. Like I was doing a different thing at the time. You
Totally.
know?
Yeah. So you kind of mentioned it, Ingodai.
Yeah.
This is kind of like your first venture, if you will. You have a pretty interesting story about how you got this. This formula existed, right? Before you even what happened with that?
Oh man, yeah. I feel like I've already lived too many lifetimes for one lifetime. But yeah, like
that's not a bad thing.
Yeah. Going back to the t-shirt thing, right?
Yeah.
So I get obsessed with printing, t-shirt printing, and it occurs to me through a variety of means. Actually, I was in like a photo 101 class in high school, and I got obsessed with like, wow, printing in a darkroom is really badass. Like you walk in with an idea and like a negative, and you walk out, and it's like done. It's kind of magical. Yeah. It's chemistry, but it's magic. And at the same time, I'm running this little t-shirt company, and there's like a light bulb that goes off in my brain, which is like, why can I not do this beautiful photo printing process but on my t-shirts? So that was like the basic idea, and then like I guess this just speaks to like how hard my brain holds onto an idea, like a little weird clenched baby fist, like where basically I was like, that would be cool, and then I was like, must do that, and my first thought was like, someone's already done that. There must be some cool fabric chemistry thing. I started searching for it, couldn't find it, and then I started buying like obscure books about printing and like print processes and textile stuff, and I find a reference to like a thing that sounds very similar to what I'm trying to do. And I mean, this is like a rabbit hole, but basically like there's 3 years in my life where I'm like basically stalking someone that has this like information about this weird dye formula, and they're up in the Bay Area, and I'm
By
in
information,
Detroit.
do you mean like patented, or
It's
is
a
it
trade
just kind
secret,
of like,
and it was like this like there was this formula kind of developed by this Stanford chemist who then ended up running a commercial paints company in the 40s. We're talking like, this is what I'm talking about. This is some weird stuff. Yeah. And then he sold that company to another guy who then ran that company through the 80s and then retired. And I'm trying to hunt down that guy to be like, what about this formula? So like, literally imagine being stalked by a teenager when you're like, retired. You're like a retired paint person, okay? And he's like, literally, he was like, stop calling me. Like, he was like, I don't know why you're doing this. Like, no one cares about this formula. Like, no one needs this stuff. And for 3 years, I stalked him. He didn't have an email address, so I had to write him physical letters. This is what I'm doing at home as a teenager. Gosh. And then finally, he's like, fine, like, yeah, like, he realized it was no longer just like a teenage fancy, like maybe I was really serious about this after like 3 years. He was like, okay, like we can meet about this, and there's like even more story from there, but I basically convinced him to let me use the IP if I bought all of his like old dead stock inventory, and so I ended up buying that from him, and then I ran that company for 4.5 years, and I had to perfect the formula. It wasn't like ready-made. It was just like I had to become like a chemistry person.
So it's not like you bought the trade secret. You bought his inventory to be able to use.
I bought his inventory to be able to, because that started teaching me the first elements of like the art of the deal, or whatever you want to call it, which is like he didn't want to sell the trade secret. Like he wanted to get rid of this inventory sitting in a garage. So finally, I was like, okay, if that's what you want, I'll come pick up everything in a U-Haul truck. But you gotta like tell me about this chemistry.
And so this was like after your Kickstarter. Yeah, this is after your Kickstarter campaign.
No. This is all before. Wait. I'm trying to not get the math wrong. No, this is that's basically happening simultaneously, or like a little bit before that first Kickstarter campaign. This is when I'm still in school. Like this is how. Yeah, it was like totally. That was a crazy decision to like tell this guy like, I will come and buy this stuff from you. I had like no idea if there was a market for it. So actually like the first Kickstarter campaign is happening when I'm still like crafting that deal with him, and I was kind of like testing out the market of like, can I really do this? Am I going to really make money if I do this? And then I think I completed the deal with him soon thereafter.
So at this point you're just kind of going based off of what your passions are and just kind of pursuing those?
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's what's interesting about like not getting a degree in business is like there was no market analysis of like
Nothing.
yeah, and no one would ever
No
have
feasibility
done
test, whatever.
Yeah, but that's what's fascinating. That sticks with me though. No one would have ever done that company if they had done any sort of MBA analysis on that idea.
Yeah.
Never.
No.
There's no. What's the target market size for a photographic fabric dye?
Have you done a concept test? Have you gone and interviewed everybody to see if yes they'll buy this or yes they'll pay for it? Like
I didn't
that's
know.
everything. My whole class.
Yeah, like and so that sticks with me in my entrepreneurial heart because like sometimes the best ideas like would never pass muster from an MBA. It's like because some part of it sucks in some way. But we sold millions of dollars worth of that fabric dye.
I think when you go to business school or get your MBA, it's more about how to break down those ideas and be like, yeah, that's not going to work, that's not going to work, as opposed to entrepreneurship where you're just like, I don't really care what is in that textbook. I'm just going to try it anyways and figure out another solution. You
have to push through. You have to pierce through because like piercing through like an idea that sounds bad or trying something out in the market. Maybe it is a bad idea. The good idea is on the other side of the bad idea.
Right.
And if you never tried the bad idea, you
won't discover the good one.
You're never going to get there. And if you spend all your time spreadsheeting, market sizing, like you're probably not going to find that thing,
So you do Inco Dye for what, 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, from like 2009 to 2014.
Okay.
Yeah.
And does that sort of change, like transform into Lumi, or is it?
No, it's confusing because we called both things Lumi at different times. I just really like the name Lumi, and I actually have a diary entry from like me when I was a teenager that said like I shall run a company called Lumi, and
really, So that's how you came up with the name.
Well, Lumi for the dye company made more sense because it stands for light, like illumination.
Yeah.
Right.
But then we've got like Lumi.com. We got all the Lumi handles, like Facebook.com/Lumi. Like I fell in love with the name, and I'm not saying I'm gonna call the rest of my whole entire life Lumi, but it's like I liked it enough to keep it for this company. But they're two separate companies. Like we literally that was an LLC, a California LLC. Right. We shut it down. We started a whole new entity. We just called it the same thing. So
that's funny.
Yeah.
Cool. So you start Lumi, and you're printing on at the time T-shirts and different kinds of like mugs and things like that.
Yeah.
What happened? Like why boxes? What happened?
Yeah. So
packaging.
Like the jump from fabric dye and everything to this. Like that's definitely a crazy jump. I think there was a certain amount of business momentum that I understood to the dye company, which is like when you have a niche product that with a certain very specific type of audience, you go out and you saturate the market. Like at a certain point, everyone who's ever going to buy that product has bought it pretty much. And I feel like we were reaching that point in 2014, and so you have to ask yourself a pretty hard question. There's different models. You either launch Inco Dye 2.0, right? Mm-hmm. You tell everyone, throw out all your original Inco Dye, let's make the new one. You create a new kit. You decide to launch adjacent products, like new tie-dye kit or some who knows what. I decided, I think that it was a kind of a crazy choice, and it was also my co-founder and I, Stefan, talked about this a lot, strategized a lot together, but we made the choice, like, we don't want to do any of that. We could have launched new Inco Dye 2.0. I had distribution into all these art supply stores. We could have made some decent money with that and stuff. But we decided, like, maybe let's say this idea, we did it. Like, I think that's an interesting concept of a business is people expect a business to, like, never end, right? Like, a business is a thing that you start, and ending it is supposed to be, like, a failure, right? Well, if there's no return or if someone got, had a bad result, sure, you could call it a failure. But I think in the first business, which was primarily bootstrapped, we launched a product. We sold as much of that product in the market as humanly possible. It was a profitable success. And then one day I said, I'm not going to sell this product anymore. I'm going to start a new business. Like, I don't know. It's crazy, kind of a crazy choice. But at the same time, it's like, I think too many entrepreneurs stick with something for too long, right? Like, if I was running Inco Dye now, I think it would be.
It's almost like that sunk cost of all that time that you spend building it.
Yeah.
When you've come to the realization, like, all right, there's nothing more here.
Yeah.
I need to sort of pivot into something.
Yeah.
or like keep doing this, knowing that there's no end of the road, like clear tunnel of the tunnel. So it's like
and it was like a tough. 2014 was a tough year. It's ironic because like it was our biggest year in sales of Incodie yet. So it was not like the company was flagging. It was our best year ever, profitable. There was we could have done a lot of things with that entity, and to make the decision but I was very unhappy because Steph and I are ambitious people, and we were running a dye business for 4.5 years. I'm not knocking it because I love that product, super passionate about it. But I wanted to do something new, and I think that that's the other thing. I think sometimes entrepreneurs look at it as closing that business. Does that make that business a failure or that product a failure, or do I have to throw it all away? I think we kind of looked inside ourselves and were actually. We learned so much running that company. What else can we do with that knowledge?
Right.
And now we have this.
And you've proven it. At this point, you have the credibility. If you wanted to go out and raise funding for a new venture, they would see that. They would know that.
Yeah, it definitely didn't hurt when we were raising our, seed round for this company and stuff to be hey, we're not just some random people. We can point to this other profitable business we grew. Yeah.
Right. It's funny, we were having that discussion today about selling a company that you started, or even just shutting it down, but then going on to the next project and saying, hey, look, we've done it, whether it failed or not. We've done it, we've seen the process, we've learned from our mistakes, and now on to new ventures kind of thing. But what you said that you wanted to do something new. Why Lumi.com? Why packages? Why why what we see today?
Yeah. So I think, Steph, this is I know it seems like a weird jump, fabric dye, packaging, there are some connections, some real knowledge connections about how much we learned about manufacturing, supply chain, printing processes that all relate to this. But there's another thing, which is we are building the company now that we wished existed when we were product-based entrepreneurs the first time around. We're making a tool that we didn't have. And that, I think, is really, really exciting and really, really fulfilling. Here's one way of thinking about it. Steph and I consider ourselves beneficiaries of some really incredible companies that I'm sure you're all familiar with, Stripe, Square, MailChimp,
Which we'll kind of talk about your
Shopify.
Y Combinator journey.
All those companies, we were, for our first business, Incodie, we were using everything I just mentioned. We were using all those products within the first 6 months or 12 months they launched, because we were hungry for solutions.
Right.
We were oh my God, thank God Shopify's around. Oh my gosh, thank God Stripe. Before that, we were whatever. We were going to our bank branch to open a merchant account or whatever. So I guess what I'm saying is we had this muscle memory for what a really great solution for entrepreneurs feels like, and we watched those companies grow as users. And now we're we saw the kind of dawn of experiences, dawn of direct to consumer business models, which Kickstarter is an early prototype of. What do you call a direct to consumer model except someone getting on a camera and going, hey, I have a product idea, do you guys want it? That's direct to consumer if I've ever seen it. So basically that's an early form of all these models you see proliferating now. And so now what we're asking ourselves is, what's missing from that picture? If you can have an idea on a Friday about a product you want to launch, and by Sunday morning you've got a Shopify store live, you've got fun photos that you took yourself because that's so easy now, and you've got a MailChimp and all this stuff. What are you missing? Well, you probably aren't an expert in physical supply chain yet. You probably aren't an expert in shipping and the supply chain and logistics. There's other companies working on this stuff too, from Flexport to 3PL fulfillment companies like Shipwire and all sorts of others. But it's you start to ask yourself what's missing, and this packaging supply chain piece seemed very missing.
Yeah, which is really cool, because important too, because when an entrepreneur kind of looks, sometimes you're looking at a market and trying to solve or create a solution for a problem that doesn't even, the solution doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
Or let alone looking at a market that could be saturated, or there's just a gap that you notice because you experience that pain yourself, and there's something missing here. I'm going to fill that hole, and something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Which is, and it's funny too because like I was looking at your client list and like you have some clients that I would have never imagined would use boxes like intercom, like like intercom software.
I know.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, the physical world. Like I've always been. I don't know if it's maybe harkens back to my Detroit roots, but like I've always been fascinated by manufacturing in the physical world. I have this silly saying that I used to say to Stefan, which is like, you can't eat bits for breakfast, which is like super stupid. I'm telling you about that. But anyway, but the point is like, as obsessed with digital technologies that we all are and how like they're addictive and they make our worlds feel easier, like at some point they have to cross over. Like you can't eat them for breakfast. You have to get, you can't warm yourself with a digital coat and like use some digital thing to get your package to someone's doorstep. At some point the digital like slaps right into the physical, and I think that there maybe it has taken this many years for there to be a crop of entrepreneurs who've like lived through some of that to create this next wave of solutions. So because I see it happening, like there's Lumi I feel like is part of that wave, but there's other companies doing things as well.
So Jesse, for those that haven't heard of Lumi, what's the kind of best way for you to describe it to them? Yeah.
So Lumi helps brands source and manage their custom packaging to get we say it's a packaging solution for modern brands. And what we mean by that is like modern brands are typically going direct to consumer. Modern brands typically think that packaging matters because packaging is kind of the modern storefront. It doesn't used to matter 10 years ago whether you got into Nordstrom's. Now it matters whether your box is memorable and when it's sitting on a New York stoop, like the world has changed, and so the solutions need to change. And so at Lumi.com, you can tell us what you need, what you're looking for. You can send us your product even, and we can physically engineer the box around it. And then all the way through, what we really are is a supply chain company.
Right.
We have companies launch, like the founders will launch a company and they're in New York, but they're shipping out of Reno and Kentucky and a city in Europe. And they need boxes in all those locations. So we can set them up with a Lumi dashboard. We build out the physical specifications of their box. We can produce in those 3 locations, and they don't have to worry about it. So that without something like Lumi, that would be tremendously difficult, like way more than a 10-person startup could ever handle, like the logistics of sourcing from 3 countries or whatever.
To do it in-house.
So it's,
I wouldn't be asking this had I not gone to law school, and I hate that I'm asking this question.
Go for it.
But it's interesting to me because I was just thinking about it while you were talking, was when you customize these packages for each of these different companies or brands, is there any like IP that belongs? Is the IP yours or is it the brand's? That's
a really interesting question. Actually, I was thinking about this subject recently, and we have a pretty simple terms of service. Like it's pretty straightforward. Like all of the brand, everything related to your brand mark, your graphics, everything that signifies you as your brand is yours. And when you share those files with us, like you retain ownership of those files and that stuff. The structural engineering of a box, like I'll give an example. Like, let's say your box has a handle on it.
Right.
Well, there's only so many ways to put a handle on a box. Let's just say there's 4 ways. Well, you can't own that handle. Like, you're gonna see that handle on thousands of other boxes from other brands because it's it relates to how packaging is engineered and designed. Like, there's only so many ways to do a handle. So unless someone has like an actual copyrighted or patented or trademark design that's very specific to them, the structural engineering part is it's not even our IP. It just is it's almost public domain. It's like you can't expect it to be only used on your brand. Yeah.
I was just randomly thinking about that because I was like, there's so many brands that you could work with and so many different problems. I don't want to get into the law.
But it is a fascinating thing. I think that, but I think the graphic stuff clears it up. Like, the brands are, for clarity, we aren't a design agency. Right. We help you produce and manage these supplies.
Exactly.
So you did the design. Your team supplied it to us. So we don't, we produce what you design.
Yeah, and I was focused more so on the design because, when you talk about modern storefront, which I think I love that. I love that phrase because, at this point, people are just ordering on Amazon. Like, that's it. It's on Amazon. It's getting to your door more so than you are going out to the malls or whatever shopping centers. And so when you do open that up, that tiny little store is kind of like your own, design, right?
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. Like, for most brands these days, launching online, that box is the only physical touch point they will ever have with that customer aside from their product. So it holds a space in people's brains. Like and then you see like I did a talk one time where I used photography of like my own photography of street shots from New York of like Blue Apron boxes sitting on stoops and away boxes literally being like thrown out of a UPS truck, and it's like these are the scenes of our life now. Everyone's seen this stuff, and if you can't pretend it's not sinking into your brain, you're remembering it like that. This is the new marketing, you know.
Totally, yeah, because it's not only like an experience for the actual customer, but also people around them. Like if they want to reuse that box, or if like you said, it's sitting on someone's stoop, like everyone walks by sees that and like, what is that? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So let's talk briefly about Shark Tank, because you were on Shark Tank, and this is kind of right. You know,
we have to bring it up.
For those who haven't seen it, it's probably one of the best segments because it just gets really heated. So kind of tell us a little bit about that experience and how kind of that affected your, I guess, you know, the path of Lumi, if it did at all.
It's kind of a crazy. So I did Shark Tank for the fabric dye for Inco Dye, and I filmed it in late 2014, right when we were thinking through what are our next steps for Inco Dye. So it's kind of like, in a way, although most people probably don't know this, it's almost like I lived publicly this moment of figuring out my next step for this company, because we were thinking like about all these different crazy ideas we could do, and I was just down to experiment. I was like down to try things, and so applied to Shark Tank, got on the show, pitched all the fabric dye stuff, told them that we had all these new ideas for other kits and other things we wanted to do. In reality, like they throw terrible deals back at you. They throw like loans for equity, and we already had bank lines of credit and stuff. And I was
Mr. Wonderful, I assume.
Yeah. We get some offers, but they're all not great, and I walk away from the show.
You held your ground. That was great.
I held my ground. Mark Cuban said, "Good job sticking to your guns." That's what everyone remembers. Like I still get emails from people that are like, "Good job sticking to your guns." Like they just parrot him.
That's it.
It's actually, the world is kind of fascinating that way. Like everyone parrots Mark Cuban in a weird way. But anyway, like I came home from that, and I remember actually feeling like lighter, being like, now it dawned on me, like they're smart people. It is campy, it's a show, but they're smart people, and they pummeled me with questions about like why I was doing this and why I would want to do next steps and stuff. And I went home and I was like, you know what? They're right. Like I don't want to do this. Like it was like actually like a clarifying moment of they had really good questions that they asked, and I went home and I thought to myself, those questions are good. My answers were okay, and I actually think that I want to do something else. But here's what's awkward. I filmed that in late 2014.
Probably released like
between October when I filmed that in 2014 and in December, I moved fast. I decided I want to do a new thing, figure it out, create a business idea, apply to Y Combinator, get into Y Combinator. I'm at Y Combinator in January. 3 months later, 2.5 months later, when my episode airs for my fabric dye, I'm in Y Combinator doing the new thing.
Oh my god! So were they like?
So it's not even marketing for you at this point.
Yeah. Well, it just imagine like Y Combinator is stressful enough, and you've got the Y Combinator partners who are all like, you know, well, I was about to say they're all tech bros. There's now some tech ladies as well, but whatever. Anyway, we won't get into that. But anyway, they're like. They think Shark Tank is a total, like, they think it's for losers or whatever, like, and so I have to now deal with that, like, deal with the fact that I'm, like, up in Silicon Valley in this, like, rarefied environment
PR crisis.
where we're all dealing with, like, the future of humanity, right, and then I'm on Shark Tank, and it was like, oof. Anyway, I've weathered it.
So yeah, kind of the segue into Y Combinator.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that experience, because you know, obviously, for those who don't know Y Combinator, I assume everyone knows at this point.
Yeah.
They've harbored and helped grow some of the largest companies these days, including Airbnb and Dropbox, Stripe, Reddit. Early days.
It's a phenomenal experience for a founder. So I think that, you know, it's a phenomenal experience for a founder.
Sorry to cut you off. This was Sam Altman who was heading it up at the time.
Yeah, Sam Altman was leading at the time. Although Paul Graham was like, we had office hours with him. He was around.
Amazing.
Yeah, he was around. But here's how I put it, and it's like anything. Everything is such an individual experience. And I almost want to put out a disclaimer, like, which is my fundamental belief about all business advice is like anyone who tells you there's one way of doing it, like that's the worst advice you've ever heard. Like, so my advice about Y Combinator is like, it was great for me. It might be terrible for someone else. Like, I don't know. I'm not in charge of your journey here, but like, but the reason why I think it was great for me and for us was that I went to school for design, okay? Then I ran a bootstrapped company. To jump into the world of venture-backed startups and to understand how the ecosystem works, I can't imagine a faster way of doing that than spending 3 months living in Mountain View and doing Y Combinator. It's like 3 months, it's like 5 years of information packed into 3 months. It's very stressful to get 5 years of information in 3 months, but then, and I'm not professing to be some sort of expert in Silicon Valley now, but I'm just saying, like, you learn really fast. You learn the language. You learn how you talk. You learn how to pitch things. You learn what everyone's worried about, how they do their metrics. Like, it's just so much information. The amount of coffee meetings you'd have to do to learn that amount of information is insane. So for me, I think it was very valuable. And we came out of that experience and raised a great seed round from great partners. And so I have zero complaints.
Yeah. Tell us about Paul Graham. Is he as hardcore as they say he is?
He wasn't. For my personal experience was that he I think he's intense. He's an intense person.
Of course.
We've remained in touch a bit, mainly over email, and like he'll just give like really frank feedback over email. But for me though, like, I think that when he was a little bit more involved in the day-to-day of Y Combinator, I've heard crazy stories, but it was a little bit more, this is again just my experience, but like it was a little bit more, I think he was a little bit removed and it was a little bit more of this like grandfatherly or fatherly figure where I think he felt a little bit more chill, like, and so he was, my entire experience was like him really trying to help every startup, like trying to provide perspective.
He brings such a different perspective every time. It's kind of insane. It's like, wow, where's like, all this coming from?
Yeah, imagine if someone's seen the pattern recognition of like 1,000 startups. There's just things in their brain that are very valuable. So he challenged us in different ways. Or I remember asking him, like, he said some kind comments, and I remember asking him, like, why, like, I felt at the time like we had no idea what we were doing, and so I remember asking him, like, why do you think we do? Why do you have so much faith? Yes. I remember asking him, like, because he actually, he said some very encouraging things, and I remember literally being like, why are you saying that? Like, like, why do you think we have anything figured out? And
Paul Graham.
Because I felt like we didn't, and he said it was like a pattern recognition comment. He said, you know what, like, you guys, and he was talking about both Steph and I, kind of remind me of like these other super passionate, design-oriented founders, like the founders of Airbnb or whatever, who like they have
not a bad comparison.
Where he was like, I believe that even if things are kind of cloudy for you right now, that you have like that you know something about the way this market is headed that maybe other people don't know, like that you have a bit of special knowledge, and I'm not trying to be self-aggrandizing. He was not calling us the founder of Airbnb or something, but that was his answer, was like, it was like pattern recognition of like, you might not know it yet, but it seems like you have some special knowledge about this area, or
you have what it takes to figure it out and kind of make the right decision to get you in the right
because you're really truly passionate. You're the type of person to push through the challenges and actually figure it out. He wasn't guaranteeing that. That's what he said.
Yeah. So you're born and raised, in Detroit. You moved to LA, this whole new life, and you go to college, start a company. Now you're in San Francisco, which you were there at the time, right, for Y Combinator, or was it? Okay,
we were just there for 3 months for the program.
Okay,
and then we came back
but you
here.
kind of experienced that city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why did you kind of decide to still remain in LA versus you're kind of, this whole like new market has opened up in San Francisco, and I mean, every tech company's up there, like, or has some sort of presence there.
It really honestly never occurred to us to stay, and it's not a knock on San Francisco. I think that's an incredible environment for startups, but like the diversity, like, we love being down here because there's so much going on here, and I feel like we have customers in San Francisco and everywhere, but like to be around, to be closer to manufacturing, to be closer to the like supply chain and logistics, like the Port of Long Beach is the second largest port in the country. There's like some really practical, interesting reasons, and then there's just like I don't know, like we never considered it. We are like LA people. We this idea is like very practical, and it's like an LA. It just feels like the DNA of this company should be here. And I don't know if that's a really apt description, but it's like honestly, it never crossed our minds to stay.
So you start this company after you come back to LA after Y Combinator. What are some of the challenges that you run into as a founder of this tech company?
Yeah. I mean, probably like every challenge in the book. I don't know. What do founders run into? Like, I mean, the first year of running this company, we were really figuring it out. I think that are you familiar with Chris Dixon? He's an investor, and he has a great blog. I believe this is from his blog. I hope I'm getting this right. He has a blog post called The Idea Maze.
I have not heard of it.
And so I think I'm getting those details right. And it's about the fact that some founders like have a great idea and they've like modeled it all out, and then they just go execute on it. And other founders go through like the idea maze. There's a virtue to the idea maze, which just means like by the time you get through it, because you've tried every angle on your idea, finally like you hit on one, and you really have a lot more clarity on why that idea is right, because you've tried all the other ones.
You know all the reasons why it's wrong.
You know all the reasons why the other things adjacent to it won't work. Because you've tried those too, and you failed at those. So I think that Steph and I are a little bit more, at least for this concept, kind of went through the idea maze. And so what problems did I run into? We came back, and we were expected to grow a massive company.
And this was the first time you had raised funding, right?
This is the first time we'd raised funding, and we had to figure it out. The good news is we weren't new to being managers. We had run a company with employees. Like, there's certain things that we didn't have to figure out that was great to just not have to deal with that. But I mean, the pressure and the challenge of growing something that is supposed to be really large and impactful if you succeed is there's no blueprint for that, and then for good reason, because if there was, then it would immediately stop working because someone would do it, and then you have to rip it apart. So it's like, I don't know, what is the sensation of coming back and having a little bit of money in the bank, but realizing that you have to build hopefully a industry or world impacting company. I mean, I don't know, you run into everything is a problem.
It's a good answer.
The more like the quicker answer would be like, what went right? Like, I could probably like list off 3 things, but what went wrong is like 1,000 things. I can't list them off.
Just reacting and adapting.
Right. You have to because there just is no blueprint for that. So I think we learned a tremendous amount that year, and we did find out some things that worked, and probably some of the best lessons that year came from listening to our customers who, when we were trying all of our other crazy ideas, they were like, we're having trouble with our packaging, and we were like, oh, interesting, we'll deal with that later. And then finally we were like, oh, let's listen to these people, like, we should help them with their packaging.
Yeah. So you're now in year 8, right? Sort of 4, right? 3.
This business is in its 3rd year.
Lumi.com.
Lumi.com, and then Stefan and I have been working together for 8 years. Yeah.
Okay, so let's call it 3 years. You're at this point where you have some, pretty big clients and amazing clients that you're working with. What's next for Lumi? Like, where do you see it going for the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I think it's kind of humbling to be in an industry that is so large that like what you're doing is kind of a drop in the bucket. Like the U.S. market for packaging is like, I mean, it's like we could throw around crazy numbers. They're all massive numbers. So it's like hundreds of billions of dollars here and this and that, and like and so it's I think what's interesting about that is you have to ask yourself about whether the moves you're making now, like even if your numbers are good, like in startup parlance, like people are doubling and tripling and 25% month over month, like all their whatever goals. It's all good stuff, and everyone should be shooting for that stuff. But then, if you extrapolate out the math, you still have to ask yourself, like, even if I do all of that, am I going to make a dent? Am I going to actually create a company that's impactful or has market share or does something that matters to people? So I think that what's next for Lumi is like keeping that in balance, right? Like Lumi is growing, so things are working. But what does working mean, right? Like, what does working mean? Does working mean you're profitable? Does working mean you reach that $100 million mark in sales? Like, everyone could give you a different random thing of like what working is. But so I think the hard part and what comes next, so to speak, is like to me, working, like the company working, is continuing to hit milestones, but continuing to ask ourselves, what are we doing now that like really helps people, really provides a durable value where like 7 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, we can point at that and be like, that's when that industry changed a bit. Like we pushed the needle, like we moved something. And I think that's a tough question to keep asking. It like it's an exhausting question to keep asking because the answer is like you're always not doing enough, but you have to. It's just that balancing act of like trying to make sure you're still doing that, not just focusing on those milestones that are 3 months out or whatever.
Well, I mean, Jesse, it's been a great conversation. I mean, if you have any other questions, this has been awesome.
Yeah, no, I just love your energy, and it's very inspiring to see someone so young and having done so much. Starting at 15, because you see all that she's done, you see her product, and I think I encourage all our listeners to go check out the product and what they look like. I think it tells definitely more of a story once you see those boxes. They're not just boxes, but at the end of the day, they are.
Yeah.
But what it kind of carries, and what emotions you feel when you're getting that package and opening it up, I think is really kind of part of that magic that you guys are creating here. And we just want to thank you for sitting down with us.
No, this was great. I really appreciate you guys taking the time with me. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jesse.
Of course.